Loser documentary coming out on Netflix in the age of Ozempic is a friendly reminder that we don't actually care about fat people's health.
The Netflix Biggest Loser documentary has gotten everybody talking, and we need to talk about it. Hey, beautiful people, how you all doing today? It's your girl Destiny here, and welcome back to my channel. How have you all been? Hope you guys are doing great. So, Netflix just released a documentary on The Biggest Loser. If you are like me, if you're a millennial, you know The Biggest Loser was one of the biggest show back in the 90s, and it was a show about losing weight and all that. The show at the time was very entertaining to us watching it, but looking back at it is like, okay. So apparently now Netflix decided to do a documentary which unveiled a lot of the toxic environment that these people were on, and some of the contestants came to share their story, which was horrifying. And the coach, one of the coach, Bob was there, but Julia Michaels was not there. The producers of the shows were there. They talked to some of the mind behind it. The doctor in the show was there, and for me, it was a really interesting take to see like some of the things that we didn't see watching the show, and also seeing that perspective and looking back at that show at this grown age where we're very self-aware, we're very intentional about our life, seeing how that show was not a show to be watched in the first place. But one of the things that also got people squinting was the fact that Julia Michaels was not part of the documentary. And also, she also reacted to the documentary, which it seems like she's suing, or she might be suing Netflix for some type of misinformation. And even the doctor, she mentioned the doctor, which we're going to get into, because once the show was released, she had a call to TMZ, and she kind of shared our own perspective, our own thoughts about the show. So let's go check out the people's reaction to this documentary, and then we'll come back and talk. And if you haven't seen this documentary, go check it out. I promise you, you will like it, especially if you watch the show The Biggest Loser. So let's go check it out, and then we'll come back and talk more.
What's your grievance with the
Okay,
Netflix documentary?
of course. Well, honestly, it's just filled with so many lies. And of course, I have the emails and the text messages to back all of this up. And, right now, my team and I are trying to figure out the best way of going forward in dealing with this. Do we pursue this legally? Do I just do a data dump and give you all of the emails and all the receipts? But for the show's doctor to suggest that I never worked with him, for example. That's one of his lies. There are, Harvey, I mean, I don't know, hundreds of emails going back and forth between me and the show's doctor. However, I did have very serious issues with the way the show's doctor handled the contestants. And I requested, and I have all of this in email, that the contestants see specialists and other doctors. Sometimes they allowed that to happen. Sometimes they didn't. There was an endocrinologist in particular that I had asked them to refer my contestants to, named Dr. Katja Van Hurley. Of course, Dr. Huizenga was very angry about this, and she would often overturn many of his decisions. So, for example, a contestant showed up and was on metformin. Dr. Huizenga would randomly, and I again can prove all of this in emails to you, randomly pull contestants off of medications, which is, by the way, what he did to Tracy, who's in the documentary. I believe he pulled her off of, I think she was on Prozac, and he pulled her off of her Prozac. And of course, when you pull someone cold turkey off of antidepressants, they're going to have a really severe, significant reaction. And I mean, this is just common sense. You don't have to be a doctor to know not to do that. So I then said, you can't be pulling contestants just cold turkey off of metformin. And our contestant who had PCOS and was on the metformin for that started to have all kinds of negative reactions medically. I requested that she go see Dr. Van Hurley. And then Dr. Van Hurley put her back on the metformin. So this is just one of the things that I have had issues with the show's doctor over.
I just finished the first episode of Fit for TV, which is the Biggest Loser documentary, and some of these producers, man, This show just shows you how evil producers are. And the worst part is, both of the producers genuinely thought that they were in the right for things. Like, they were like, oh, we put a temptation table out because there's always temptation in your fridge and we want to make it relatable. Like, no, you just wanted to embarrass these people on TV. Because that brought in ratings, that brought in views. And even this trainer, Bob Harper, he was kind of pissing me off, but at least he's better than Julian Michaels because he's at least standing on his business. Julian Michaels didn't even appear in the documentary in this first episode, at least. But he's like, yeah, you know, I was just doing that extra stuff because we were making a show. Like, at the end of the day, it was a show. Like, I wouldn't do that if I was actually training somebody to lose weight. And he said the producers were happy, so it does all boil down to the producers. And some of these contestants, they really wanted to change their lives, and that's the sad part. Like, some people, they had type 2 diabetes, they wanted to hang out more with their kids, they just wanted to be more secure themselves, and they thought losing weight would help their marriage, help everything in their lives, be a better mother. And yeah, we as Americans, and maybe around the world, have an obsession with weight, and it is unhealthy, especially if you're like internalizing that and you're not doing things in your life because of your weight. Mind you, some people are literally passing out and like having medical emergencies, and they were like, oh, just keep working out, keep doing it. Well, I'm about to watch part 2 right now, so follow me so you can see when I upload part 2.
My absolute dream documentary came out today. The Reality of the Biggest Loser. If you're like me, you grew up watching this absolutely fucking unhinged show. And it basically consisted of these two trainers having two teams of morbidly obese individuals, screaming at them, making them run until they threw up, basically just like fat shaming them on national television. And we all watched them rapidly lose weight at an unhealthy speed. But this was the early 2000s. We didn't care about that stuff. You're hungry? Here's some chewing gum that's supposed to taste like a cupcake. Do we all remember the gum that tasted like dessert? It didn't really taste like dessert. This is what most of the scenes and episodes looked like. Just Jillian Michaels screaming at these people at the top of her lungs. Like, you still want to be fat? Get on the treadmill. Oh, you're going to throw up and pass out? I don't care. But the best part of the show was the transformations. We now know today this is wildly unhealthy. Jillian Michaels even quit the show kind of at the tail end of its run because she finally realized they were promoting really unhealthy eating and lifestyle habits. But I mean, as a trash TV watcher, these transformations gave me a serotonin boost that like nothing else could ever replicate. And we wonder why we all have body image issues. This is what I was watching when I was like 12. But I can't wait to watch this later. Are you guys watching too?
Thinness at any cost. That was one of my takeaways from watching Fit for TV about The Biggest Loser. Now stay to the end because I have another takeaway I'm going to share, but we'll get back to the first one. Now this is an unhealthy notion because there's this idea that thinness equates health. Living in a larger body, it doesn't mean you're unhealthy. If you're living in a thin body, that doesn't necessarily equate to being healthy. We have to be the monitors of our own health because there are all of these metrics that don't consider who we actually are as people. And to have people think that there's some kind of failure because they can't maintain these ridiculous, unhealthy parameters that have been set for them, it's mind-blowing. Also, Jillian Michaels has always been the villain. Now, there's some other takeaways. I'll get back to those later, and we'll double back on the Jillian Michaels thing soon.
As someone that grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s and suffered with extreme disordered eating, I would seek out The Biggest Loser regularly as a form of content, like I would later seek out Tumblr and America's Next Top Model for that same type of content. Getting a little personal here, I know that is not a unique experience that I had, but when Netflix dropped their documentary Fit for TV, which is an expose behind the making of The Biggest Loser, of course I was going to watch all 3 episodes in a sitting. And right off the bat, we learned some horrible things from this documentary that should shock absolutely no one, but I think they could have dived way deeper into this. First things first, we do not hear from Jillian Michaels. She did not participate in this documentary, but Bob Harper did. And of course, Biggest Loser made him incredibly famous. But after seeing how he discussed having a heart attack in 2017 on other reality shows, I thought that his take in the documentary would be a little bit different than it was. So it was a little disappointing. It seems like, for the most part, he stands by everything that happened with the show. Which, if you've seen the show and the humiliation rituals they make these contestants go through, is very disappointing to hear because I like Bob Harper. It was also really disappointing that despite how much money the network was making off the show, which ended up being billions of dollars, especially through the licensing aspect, I mean, none of these contestants got any form of aftercare treatment in order to maintain their weight loss, which, as we learn in the show, was always going to be set up for failure. And even now, in 2025, it seems like the creators of the show stand by this decision and say it just could not have been done financially, which is insane. That's such a marginal amount of money. To me, that really just shatters the illusion that the show was about helping people in any kind of way. And as evidenced by one particular contestant, Rachel, by her extreme weight loss, it just really proves that the show was always bound to collapse in on itself like a dying star, and that none of us should really be surprised by this at all. But The Biggest Loser was a reality TV show like anything else, and it was being made season after season after season. And like anything else, like Survivor, for example, they always have to make it different. They got to up the stakes. They got to include more partnerships. And when the show's premise is about a group of people competing for money on who can lose the most weight, it's only a matter of time before someone takes it to an absolute extreme. We also do not hear from her in this documentary, but I hope that she's doing well. And I watched this reveal live or whenever it aired at the time, and you can see on Bob and Julian's faces, they were shocked. Another criticism I had was just some parts of it were a little confusing. I mean, they had Tracy as one of the past contestants doing the interviews, and she had talked about that she was so hated on her season and received such backlash when she came home. But the documentary didn't really go into why, so I was just a little confused on why she was so hated. Let me know if you guys are going to be watching this documentary, and let me know your thoughts. And if you're not already, follow for more TV and movie content.
This Loser documentary coming out on Netflix in the age of Ozempic is a friendly reminder that we don't actually care about fat people's health. This show that was trying to present itself as inspirational and trying to make a positive difference in fat people's lives was actually just one big mockery of fat people. First off, they would start tempting them with food, even giving them opportunities to eat mass quantities of it before they started a journey. There was even like this competition scene where they had to put like unhealthy foods in their mouth while they try to assemble something. It's humiliating. Perpetuates the stereotype that fat people only think about food, when instead they could have just found ways for them to enjoy the foods that they like, just not in excess, in a way that is balanced. Not only were they making unrealistic expectations for nutrition, but also for exercise. In one of the episodes, they talked about how they had to burn 6,000 calories in a day via exercise. I don't know if you know that, but that's a lot. And instead of gently working their way into more rigorous exercise, they're being yelled at in the face by hellish hyena Jillian Michaels, risking physical injuries, which happened on the show. Also, the fact that the qualification to win was that you had to lose the most amount of pounds is so scary, so unhealthy. It completely strips fat people of their individuality and their needs. For a fat person to lose enough weight to be quote unquote healthy, they may not need to lose as much weight as someone else to achieve those goals. So what happens? Some of them start engaging in such dangerous behaviors so that they can lose even more weight so that they can win the money. Winner from one of the seasons, in the week leading up to winning, I don't want to say what they did, but they did something so bad that it caused severe dehydration. But losing weight in a sustainable way, being treated with respect on your weight loss journey isn't entertaining. If the fat contestants were treated with dignity, then all of the thin fat phobes would not get their ego stroked. Poor them. I would rather all you fat phobes just admit that you don't care about fat people's health. You like that we're fat. You like watching us struggle. You hate when we don't struggle. And we defy all of your stupid stereotypes.
If y'all haven't watched the documentary on Fit for TV, it's The Biggest Loser reality show that it's talking about. And some of the contestants come on there and they talk about how their time on the show was. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is Bob and Julian. Those were the two trainers on there. Their attitude towards winning at any cost. Even at the point of these contestants falling out pushed them to the point where their body is giving out. That's crazy as hell. That these people are on this show to be helped. But when you look at the documentary and how, like, back in the day, I did used to watch it too. But I didn't notice, like, the show was kind of mimicking them people. Like, taunting them, putting treats in front of them, having them carry food in their mouth for game show benefits, having them doing, like, extreme games, like one of the games where they were, like, in a cage hanging by a wire, and one of the wires almost broke with the person in the cage. Like, you people are really risking these people's lives for views. And that's crazy to me. And I don't care what you say, Jillian didn't look like a person that really cared about those people on that show. It was all for the win. Because even one of the contestants said when he won as the biggest loser, she whispered in his ear, "You made me a millionaire." Like, something ain't right with her. Every time I see her on something, I just get this vibe about her. Like, she's not a good person. She's not wrapped too tight. There's even something else out about her trying to bring up racism and how everybody always point at the white people as being the issue when other races played a part. Like, girl, you better go do your research, because obviously you didn't. But I don't know, if you haven't seen it, it's definitely a good watch. It definitely informed me of some things. I say go watch it. It was a good watch.
If you have not heard, there is a new documentary on Netflix about The Biggest Loser. If you were alive in the early 2000s, especially if you were fat in the early 2000s, you know about that show and how much of an impact it had on the culture. I had some thoughts about it, and I just wanted to share them. Number one, I'm not surprised that any of them gained the weight back, because what happens with a lot of people that are overweight, I can't speak for all of them, I can speak for myself and my experience, but what happens is that you don't get that way and stay that way simply because you're lazy and because you lack willpower. There is such an emotional issue that is going on that brings you back to food that is not talked about. So in the show, sure, they lost a lot of weight because they worked out for 6 to 8 hours a day and were eating 800 calories. But if you see, again, if you watch the documentary, you'll see how messed up a lot of these contestants' metabolisms got because of the way that they were losing weight. Instead of focusing on the emotional reasons that got them to gain the weight in the first place, all they did was focus on the physical. And again, if you are somebody who has lost weight and gained weight back, you know that there are 3 different parts to losing weight. There's a physical, obviously we got to worry about diet and exercise. There's a mental, we can't hate ourselves into change, which is another reason why I think they all gain the weight back. And number 3, there is an emotional. There is an emotional reason as to why you keep making the decisions that you are making. And that was not touched on at all. So a lot of these contestants did not get to the root of their weight gain issue. And I think that is why they gained all the weight back. So I'm not surprised at that at all. I'm also not surprised that Jillian Michaels was not a part of the documentary. The way that she would be berating the contestants that she was training, you know, I don't care if you're gonna throw up, I don't care if you're gonna pass out. It was just like, again, if you're somebody who has been overweight your entire life and just somebody who wants to lose weight, you know that in order to sustainably lose the weight, you cannot hit yourself into change. You just can't. And I think that was the perspective, or that was like the angle that she would often go with, is like just screaming and yelling at somebody. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's just not the way to get me to do something. That's for me to do the opposite, to be honest with you. She also was caught up giving her contestants like these caffeinated pills to make them lose weight. So I'm not surprised that she was not a part of it at all. She faced a lot of backlash from the show. And I'm actually really curious as to how she feels with all of this like coming out and resurfacing again. I'm also not surprised that the producers are the way that they are. Their job was to make good TV. And when season 1 came out, they had no idea what was going to happen. At first, it seemed like the show was just going to be like making fun of fat people, because y'all hate fat people, let's just admit it. Like, they hired a comedian to be the host of it, you know. They had these insane challenges where they would have to pick things up with their teeth and like just do these really degrading things that were insane. for them to think like, oh, I want to inspire people to lose weight and to keep it off is just complete bullshit to me. I'm just like, you were here to make good TV, and that's what you did. And that is obviously very clear in the challenges, in the temptations that you did, in the way in which that you would, reality, we know how reality TV works. It's never about doing good and giving back. It's about making money. And they made hundreds of millions of dollars from this show. So I'm not surprised, but they were very much so like, I mean, the show wasn't perfect, but I think it was great. And it was just like, you took 17 seasons of making fun of fat people. That's what you did. And yeah, I think it's insane. I'm so glad that there's a documentary about it, because again, for so many reasons, we just need to shed more light on the experience of being overweight, of being obese. Not in that way, but I do think that from the contestants that came back and were very open about their experience of like, I would never do this again, this was traumatizing, we're now hearing more stories about, again, what it's like to be overweight. And I hope that this is moving us in the right direction for it. So go watch it and let me know what you think.
Well, so let me know if you've seen this documentary on Netflix and what are your thoughts. And if you've not seen it, let me know too. Like, what are you waiting for? And if you were a millennial like myself that watched the show growing up, The Biggest Loser, let me know down in the comment section. Okay. But please, as always, please keep it respectful here on this channel. We're allowed to disagree, but we do it in a very respectful way. So go ahead, feel free, share your thoughts. Love to know what you guys think about this. I watched the documentary and I felt like it was nicely done. I was not surprised that Julia Michaels was not in the documentary. That's because during the filming of one of the season, she was being called out for giving our own contestants the caffeine pill, and that's kind of make things a little bit. So I was not surprised that she was not part of the documentary, but Bob was, and Bob was telling whatever truth he feels like he was telling. But also, it also gives me, and I feel like it will give everybody their own perspective on what that show is. Because if you are like me that grew up on that show and it was a show that we watched as a family, you could clearly see how that kind of messed a lot of, I would say including myself, head about what fat is and how not fat. I remember I had this sister that she was so obsessed with her weight, because bless her soul, she was so obsessed with her weight that she was working at as a child. And not to say that there's not anything wrong with the child working out, but The Biggest Loser kind of contributed to that. She wasn't even looking back at it, she wasn't even fat. She was just a chubby girl, and she was working herself out so that she doesn't get fat that way. And for me, that is really interesting, because our own mom was on the fat side, so she fears and dread being that way. And I would say The Biggest Loser contributed heavily into that. And looking at the trauma it caused, it makes sense now as a grown woman that is more emotionally, mentally, physically intelligent, now realize that everything they were doing in that show was disgusting. But at that time, it was entertaining, and we were all watching it with the, oh my goodness, who is going to lose the biggest weight? Not realizing how really toxic that is. And that's not to say that, I know I did a video of the lady that bought grocery and all that, and that's not to say that being thin is healthy and being fat is it. And I feel like that's a misconstrued that a lot of us has. But also, being obese is not healthy, and being super skinny is not healthy. For me, whatever size you are, just be healthy. If you are in that space where you're healthy and you enjoy what you do, like I personally, I still eat on my snacks and all that. Even though my tummy is like I'm 6 months pregnant, I still eat on my sweets because that's what I like. Do I like my tummy? No. Do I want to do something about it? Yes. So that's why, like, people can really understand. Like, I feel like it varies from people to people, but I agree, society as a whole, the world as a whole, like we have a thing for laughing at fat people. It is what it is. That is it. And I get it. We're kind of deconstructing all that now, but it is what it is. You see children being bullied because they are overweight. You see even as adults being bullied because we're weight. But seeing how the weight in The Biggest Loser was loose drastically, now it makes sense that it was not healthy. But at that time, it was an inspiration. Everybody was like, oh my God, I want to live. But looking back at it, that is so dangerous. And the crazy part, I think one of the biggest revolution I had watching this documentary was the fact that after they do the show and everything, there is no follow up on them. So they just leave them to their grace. When normally on the show they are working 6 to 8 hours daily, which is not even realistic for a human being to be working 6 hours a day, working out 6 hours a day. It's not possible. So being on a show like that intensively train and try to burn fat, and then you get into the real world where 6 hours 8 hours is not a realistic time for you to go work out. You have bills to be, you have to go back to work and all that. Definitely you're going to gain all those weight back. So the purpose for the show was not sustainable, and I'm not surprised that most of the contestants gain weight back. That's because it is not sustainable. Because if you are cutting a lot of calories and then you're working 6 8 hours again, you're definitely going to lose that drastic change in a period of how many weeks? 3 months or so. That's ridiculous. Looking back at it, it does. And for we watching it, that looking back at it is really disgusting. For we're watching it on a weekly basis and getting super excited about it, not realizing how can somebody lose 5 pounds in a week. That's crazy. What did you do? And then let's even come back to Julia Michaels and even some of the way the people were talked to and all that. See, I feel like in the 90s, a lot of the reality show was like even American Next Top Model, a lot of the reality show, there's a lot of verbal abuse that goes on that I feel like we're so traumatized and then we're so numb to madness like that, that we didn't see how toxic that was. How you will be telling somebody, if you don't do it, you can pick your kid. Like, how will you even be talking to another human being, raising your voice? Why are you shouting, talking to a human being? You can't even, don't shout talking to a child, then least of all talking to an adult that is trying to do better for themselves. Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. But yeah, you guys let me know if you guys will watch the documentary, which I will recommend you watch the documentary, okay? And share your thought about it. Share this video with somebody that you want to be part of the conversation, because that's what we do here. We have banging conversation. So go ahead and share this video. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, smash the like button, because this helps YouTube to push up my content for more people to see, and that will be you supporting this channel and this girl here. So go on and do that. Subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you guys in my next video. Deuces.